ahead and click on the record button here, because it looks like for now it might be just us. So what we're going to do, of course, is we're going to start building our shifts first. You're going to see an admin shift. You'll see possibly a detective shift in there, so we keep those guys separate. And you might have some, additional departments, whether it's support services. You might have like a traffic shift somewhere. So we're going to create shifts first. We'll create the day, afternoon, and evening patrol shifts as well. The next step, though, will be to create the schedule rotations. So you'll have a few easy ones, as I said before. You'll have people just working like Monday through Friday schedules. Those will be a breeze to build. But then we're going to have to focus on the patrol schedules. Now, the key there is to determine the start date of each work pattern or schedule rotation. We're going to enter the work days and off days pattern within each one of those rotations. And your officers will be assigned to those rotations in those 12-week blocks, and you'll have the opportunity to build out those schedules as far ahead as you would like, right? So we're probably in the middle of a 12-week rotation as we speak, so you'll probably assign people to that, and then you'll reassign those same group of guys to different rotations, starting up, on another effective date. That'll carry them through another 12 weeks. And pretty much as long as you have those schedules, sorted out and you know where everyone is going, you can choose to build the schedules as far ahead as you would like to see them. Now, you will always have the opportunity of reassigning people, as I imagine things like that happen. So even though you could build a schedule several months out, if someone is changing to another squad or whatever the case is, you can always do that as it becomes necessary. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do from the desktop application is we're going to click on the Administration drop-down menu, and from the Shift Center category, we're going to select Set Up Shifts. When you open this screen, you may notice that there are several shifts already entered in for you. These are just sample shift types. And so you can delete the ones that you don't need. Just click on them, click on the delete button up top, click yes to confirm, and you'll remove it from the list. Now, in my schedules here, I run 12-hour shifts, but we can put in a couple of samples of 8-hour schedules. Now, what times do your shifts run for the patrol side?
Midnight is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and then 7 to 3, 3 to 11.
Okay. And you just, do you refer to those as first, second, third shift, day, afternoon, evening?
Day, eves, and mids.
Days, eves, and mids. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's click on the new button up top, and on the shift code, you're going to just keep it simple. I'll just use days here for my first example. And before we go any further, do you have dispatchers that you're going to be scheduling through here?
Yes.
Okay. And now, do they also follow like a days, evenings shift?
Yeah, they work the same hours, yep.
They work the same hours. Okay. About how many people do you have on the patrol, and about how many on the dispatch schedules?
We have 20 on patrol, and then dispatch is 8.
Okay, 8 in total. Okay, so I would recommend, since you're going to have more than one day shift, try to enter a shift code like what I have here, PTL days, abbreviate patrol in some form or fashion, and you're going to do the same thing with dispatch as well.
Okay.
And the reason we're doing that is because when we're looking at the schedules, we want to keep, officers and sergeants on the, patrol block, and then have another block where the dispatchers are listed. Could you have everyone under the same, 7 to 3 and 3 to 11 shift? You could. But what I find is keeping them separate is handy, because normally they are supervised by different people, at least at times. And so it allows the, supervisors to sort of focus on, their exact group.
Gotcha.
Under the description, you can go ahead and type out the full name for the shift. And you can choose, you might have enough character length here to put in the times. Now, whatever description you enter is what will be displayed on the top left portion of each shift block once you start building your daily schedule views.
Okay.
Next, you're going to choose an abbreviation, one character, for that shift. And there's nothing wrong with using D for patrol days as well as dispatch days. And the reason for that is that the abbreviations are only used in specific schedule views. And those schedule views are actually organized by the group or squad. So whenever you're looking at a day squad or platoon, you're going to see Ds used to summarize their working days. And again, that's only done on maybe 2 or 3 screens in the entire system.
All right.
Next, you're going to key in the start and end times for that particular shift. And of course, for the patrol and dispatch schedules, the times I imagine are pretty rigid. If, however, when you build your admin shifts, if you have some folks that work 7 to 3, some that work 8 to 4, others that work 9 to 5, or some that just keep flexible scheduling, I would just go with default times, and then you can always adjust that person's start and end time separately. And I just wanted to point that out. Here, you'll notice there's a Vanessa Jones here, a lieutenant on an admin schedule. And so because she's working slightly outside of the 8 to 4 that everyone else is working, she has her start and end times displayed to the right of her name. And then that way you're just not creating 2 or 3 versions of an admin shift, or any shift for that matter.
Gotcha.
Next, you're going to move on all the way down and over to the right, and if that shift will have minimum staffing requirements defined, just click on the Yes button. Now, in your 6th online class, the second to last one, you're going to learn how to create your staffing requirements. So you'll be able to select which shifts have staffing requirements. You'll be able to determine what the skill sets or positions are that you're tracking. So you might be looking for officers, supervisors or sergeants, and dispatchers at any given time. So you will be able to create those skill sets or positions, and then you'll be able to define how many people you need per hour. And you'll be able to select any one of the shifts that you create and track those requirements. Okay, let's click on the Save button, and there's our new day shift, PTL days. Okay. And you'll just want to repeat that for the other shifts. Now, I did want to mention that when you create your evening shift, you mentioned that it starts at 11 p.m. and ends at 0700?
Correct.
Okay. So now, the folks that are coming to work tonight on the 12th, do we consider them to be working the 13th?
Yes.
Okay. So what you want to do in this case, just for any shift that's overlapping midnight, at the very bottom, you're going to want to turn off the shift starts on current day. And once again, over to the right, any shift that you're going to be tracking minimum staffing requirements, just click on the Yes button before you click on the Save button over on the up top. Okay. Now, in addition to the administrative, patrol, and detective schedules, you may also want to consider a training shift. And so a training shift would look a lot like this. Let's click on the New button. I'll just call that training. Use that for the description. And under start and end times, I'll leave that set to 0. And the reason why I recommend creating one is because you may want to have a training shift somewhere on the schedule so that if you have someone who is on a regular day off and you're going to assign them to training, even though the training hours typically may occur during the day shift, you may not want that individual listed along with everyone else, right? You may choose to keep them separate from, you know, the working patrol guys.
All right.
Now, for those that are training during their regular work days, you'll have a choice. You'll have a choice to either keep them on their original schedule. And we normally see that if it's like in-service training, they're just going to be there for a few hours, but then they're going to just continue working their regular schedule. You may choose to just keep them displayed under that block. But if you have someone who is scheduled to work, but maybe they're going off-site, you know, somewhere else for training, maybe to the academy, you may choose to pull them out of that shift and move them to the training shift. And again, it's probably more an aesthetic choice than anything else. It's just a way of keeping people sort of separate, not confusing our supervisors, making them think someone is on our shift when they're really not working.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as you're building shifts, you'll notice over on the right there's some fields for shift diff. Now, does your department pay shift differential?
No.
They do not. Okay, wonderful. So you can obviously leave that blank. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your detective schedules and what they're like?
So the baseline schedule is Monday through Friday, 7 to 3. They do have the option of working a 10-hour schedule if they choose, but that's as the supervisor approves it on a week-by-week basis. So
I understand. Okay. Wonderful. So for your detectives, I'll just propose that you build a 7 to 3 shift for them. We'll assign them to a Monday through Friday schedule rotation. And then as those things occur, supervisors will be able to make modifications to the schedule. So, you know, if one of the detectives gets, if they're on call and, you know, they have to go somewhere and they're going to maybe adjust their hours for the following day because they've been up all night, you know, working on something, those with the appropriate privileges will be able to adjust start and end times on the fly.
well, that'll probably happen quite a bit.
I would imagine so. And, you know, I will say this. Oftentimes, when it comes to detective schedules, a lot of departments just want to have something on there so that if someone wants to take a day off, they can. You know, because you need to be on the schedule in order to take a day off. But just because of the very nature of what these guys do, you know, it's sometimes difficult to just modify the schedules on a daily basis. So some of them will just leave it set to 7 to 3. You know, the guys come in and, you know, work when they can, when they have to. The schedule may always read 7 to 3. For purposes of payroll, it may not matter much, right? Because they're still getting the same 2-week salary. It's just they're sort of flexing their schedules just to, you know, accommodate the sort of things that happen when they're on call.
Gotcha.
Okay. But of course, if that is something that you want reflected on the schedule, if you're going to have people looking at it and you know, determining who's here and they just need to know that, then of course supervisors will have that opportunity to do it. You know, your department is not that big, so you may even consider allowing the detectives to do it themselves. You know, if they need to adjust something, you know, you could give them those privileges. And as you move forward with the build and then with the training eventually, you can always make that call at a later time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Do you guys have crossing guards? Do you have to schedule any of those folks through a system like this?
No, the only people we have that I thought of that are kind of odd, or we have kennel assistants or folks that come in and clean the dog shelter that we have, and they don't really have set hours per se. They're part-timers and they're paid hour by hour.
As they work.
Correct.
And so their payroll for you guys, you take care of those kind of per diem type of people or hourly people.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to recommend for that is allow them, and are these guys fairly computer savvy, you think?
No. Okay, I guess not.
I guess not. Okay. So, and the reason why I ask is because you can allow them to log on to the web application, and you can give them the ability to request overtime, and I'm using air quotes, you can't see me, and the reason why I'm doing that is because overtime does not mean that they're being paid a time and a half. It's a mechanism that allows them to say, I worked on this day, I worked these hours, and this is the reason why I worked. So you might have an overtime reason in the system that they can use. So as they come in and work, as they're needed, they come in, they do their thing, and then they just log on and submit their entries. And the supervisor can review them and approve them. And as you're processing payroll every 2 weeks, for folks such as yourself who are salaried, right, we may not need to know how many hours, how many regular hours you worked, but for those guys who don't have salary information, we would just process those separately. So that guy that comes in and works 2 hours is going to get paid 2 hours at straight pay, and you know, our payroll process will just find those entries for you and include them on any payroll export or any report you choose to generate. Now, if they are not computer savvy, as you mentioned, then someone else is going to have to get their schedule onto the system, especially if you're going to take that step of exporting your data out to a payroll company. Yeah. So you can certainly put it onto the schedule for them as they work it. As you start moving through your training classes, you'll see how quickly an overtime entry gets posted onto the schedule. So, you know, it's really up to you. If you think it's something that they can learn, it's really just a few steps. I tell you that the nice thing about getting them to do it is that they can always log on to the system and look at their own work history. Right? So if there's ever any question as to, you know, was I paid what I was supposed to get paid, or, you know, did I work on that day? Well, the onus is on them to submit their entries, so they should have a perfectly accurate schedule that they can refer to as time goes by. Okay. Now, with that said, I would definitely consider creating a shift where those people would be assigned. You can use just one shift as a catch-all for people of various jobs to be assigned to. You know, if you needed a kennel cleanup shift, that's cool, nothing wrong with that. But I would say maybe just like a generic shift where you could just throw those entries onto would probably be enough. Okay, so that's all I have for shifts. Are there any questions on creating shifts, at least at this time?
I don't think so.
Okay, and we can certainly come back to it if there is. So for now, we'll close out, and we're going to move away from the administration drop-down menu, and we're going to move over to the build schedule menu. From the build schedule menu, we're going to select the last screen on the list called Update Rotations. And once again, you might find some template data in here. So if there are schedule rotations that you don't need, simply don't apply to your department, just highlight the ones you do not need and click on the delete button up top. And you can click yes to confirm. So we're going to start off with a very simple schedule rotation, like an admin or a detective schedule. Up top, we'll click on the New button, and you'll need to enter a two-part code. That code will be unique to that rotation. You can repeat the prefix of the code or the second part of the code, but it has to be unique when you pair them together. So what I like to do is I always like to use the first part of the code to indicate the department or division that the rotation belongs to. And that first part of the code will be limited to 5 characters, so you just might need to abbreviate that. And you'll notice over on the left I'm using COM for communications, I have my DB, rec for records, and so on. Now in the second part of the code, I have a little bit more character length, and I like to use this just to describe the type of schedule that it is. In this case, a Monday through Friday schedule. If you have someone who is sort of a part-timer, maybe they only work Monday through Thursday, you might have to create a rotation for them. And next, you're going to give that rotation a description, and you should have plenty of character length here. I believe 25 characters in total. Now, when it comes to the codes and the description, just try to make it as simple as possible, with the understanding that at some point someone else might have to assign someone to that rotation. So you just want it to be as clear as possible. Now, for an admin schedule like this one, there's really nothing to it. Just select the first day of the work pattern. Now, I like to go back all the way to the end of the year, because that allows me to schedule someone as far back, in this case, as early as January 4th.
Would it matter if, like, our next schedule rotation starts October 2nd? What if I started there?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Our next schedule rotation starts October 2nd. Is there anything stopping me from starting it there?
No, not at all. Just keep in mind that that will be the very earliest that anyone will be posted on the schedule. And you may be perfectly fine with that by the time you're done with training. Yeah, nothing wrong with doing it that way. Now, I pull it back to January 4th because every now and then I'll come across a new group such as yourself that says, well, yeah, I get it, we're building this thing halfway through the year, or even, in our case, approaching the end of the year, but I want to build a schedule for all of 2016. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but your rotation has to start early enough in order for that to happen. Right? Now, the start date must always be a working day. So, in my case here, at the very bottom, when I start creating the work pattern, that's going to be 5 days on, Monday through Friday, and that's my Saturday and Sunday off. So that always has to be a working day. Now, for the end date, I like to build these out till about 2020. Now, just to clarify, the end date is not the end of the schedule for a particular person. That is just the end date for the template that you are creating. Now, most of these templates are pretty much good from here until the end of time. The problem is that some of your schedule rotations might be a bit lengthy, right? If you're building a 6-week rotation, you're going to have to build that pattern in here. If you were to build that out till 2050, you're going to be here for about an hour waiting for that rotation to save. So I like doing something a little bit more modest like 2020, getting your pattern worked out, saving it, and then once you have tested it out and made sure that the template, is good, then you can go ahead and extend it for several years. And you can always come back to this screen and do that at a later time. Okay. So let's stick with our first example. Again, a standard Monday through Friday schedule. Under Shift 1, I'm going to choose my administration shift. And then I'm going to click on the Save button. As you're waiting for that to save, I just wanted to point out the Shift 2 column. And so the reason why I asked about crossing guards is because normally those guys are on, AM and PM shifts. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to assign someone to 2 shifts at the same time. It doesn't sound like you'll have that problem, but just in case you're wondering, that's what Shift 2 does for us. And there we go. The save and the build is finished. So you'll see similar schedule rotations for your detectives. Of course, you're just going to point to the right detective bureau shift or detective shift. However, when we get to the patrol schedules, they might be somewhat more complicated. So to build those, again, you can choose to enter the department or division that the rotation is for. In my department here, I'm using squad, so I can use something like SQA would be fine. And of course, the key here is, again, to make sure that I have the right start date. And as you mentioned, you might choose October 12th. Now, just keep in mind that, if the schedule itself begins on October 12th, that's fine. But if you have guys that are being reassigned as of that date, and they're being assigned sort of midway into a template that you created, you may have to build it prior to October. So in order to get the pattern right, you're going to have to define what the actual start date was, and that might be, prior to October.
Okay.
So here I will choose January 4th, just for this example. I'm only going to build that out for a couple of years. And here we sort of work off of kind of a Pitman type schedule. So here we would be on 2 days, off 2 days, on 3 days, off 2 days, back on 2, and off for 3. And then using my shifts, I would then select which one applies. Now, at the end of that pattern, it just cycles back and starts all over again. So in this case, if these guys were simply working this in a cycle, at the end of that 3 days off, they go back to working 2 on 2. Now, we do have certain variations that we see where you might do this for several weeks. And then you may work the same pattern but then rotate into, perhaps evenings or nights. So based on what little I know so far about your particular schedules, it sounds as if you'll have to create. I guess the pattern itself is 6 weeks, right? But the assignment is 12 weeks. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to build out the 6-week pattern, and even before you save, this is kind of a neat feature. You can click on View Sample, and it'll show you what that schedule looks like on a calendar.
Yeah, because I'm just, we're going from my Excel spreadsheet to this, so I'm just trying to get, when it comes down to it, my guys are going to be concerned about, what days they have off, as opposed to so I'm looking at the first line, and the first line, that particular person starts on a day off, works for 5, and then they're off for 2. Works for 4, they're off for 1. Works for 4 again, they're off for 2. So I'm just trying to find that pattern.
Yeah, and sometimes what I do when I'm trying to work out a pattern is I'll print out a calendar just like this, and I'll have to just sort of go through it and sort of work it out, right? Figure out what are the on days, what are the off days. And then what I have to do is once I get that pattern on the calendar, I then have to then just translate that into this grid. But, again, you can always view the sample to verify that you're, doing it correctly. And after you've done so, you can click on the Save button to save that rotation. Now, if, using the example you just gave me, you have a guy who is, working 5 days, and then he's 2 days off, and then, on 4 days and 2 days off. Is there someone else that is working that same pattern, but with the days shifted?
Yes.
Okay. So for that, what I could recommend doing is for this schedule rotation that I just saved, okay, this one started on January 4th. Now, if I have another group, I'm sorry, can I ask you to hold for a brief moment?
Sure.
Thank you.
I hope you're getting this.
Okay, I so apologize for that. My wife just called me and told me that the house in front of ours is on fire. So
That's a little too much excitement.
yeah, a little bit more than I needed this afternoon. So my apologies for that. My point is once you've established a pattern for one guy or for one group, you can click on the rotation that you just saved, name it something else, and just for the sake of this example, I'm going to, give it a different code. Now I'm going to choose a different date. So the pattern will remain, but now it's going to create a brand new schedule rotation without ruining the first one that we did. Because I changed that code, it knows that I'm creating a brand new instance of something. But now I don't have to repeat the data entry of getting the pattern right. Now, while we're waiting for that to save, that example you gave me, the 5242, that might be someone working days. And now you might have to create the rotation for the guys that are working afternoons or evenings. But the pattern itself might be the same. So again, just going back to the first one that we created here, maybe the pattern is the same, but it's the shifts that are different. So you can change the codes up top, then change the shifts, and it's just a bit of a shortcut instead of having to create each one of these from scratch.
Okay. So that may have answered my question already. Is so I have a supervisor and 7 or 8 available positions per shift. So each one of those is going to have to be its own rotation. Each one of those lines, so to speak, is going to be its own.
That is correct, right? Because I might be and by the way, are these guys working like steady shifts, or are they rotating throughout their 12 weeks?
Whatever shift they're on for the 12 weeks.
I understand. Okay, so if I'm that guy, and you built me a 7 to 3 schedule, then there's probably an afternoon and night schedule with the identical pattern, right? It's just the shifts that are different, but the start date might be the same, the pattern might be the same. So if you get one right, then that means you should have the afternoon and evening ones already sorted out, because you're just going to use your codes here to overwrite whatever was in there. So if you created the day one first, then you just put in evenings, squad, whatever, put in the description, just swap out the shifts, save it, and just repeat that process. It sounds like the biggest challenge is really just getting the start date of the rotation for each group. Once you do that, you're duplicating a lot of rotations more than anything.
Right.
Okay, so at this time, at least, is there any questions on building a schedule rotation?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay, so that is all that I have on the agenda for us this afternoon. Now, we are scheduled until 3 o'clock, and the reason for that is to give you the opportunity to build these now if you would like, and I can remain on standby. I can work with you on that. In fact, I can even switch over to your application if you would like to try to build some. But at this point, I'm done with what I had on my agenda, and now the rest of the time belongs to you.
I think I'm all set.
You think you're okay?
Yeah, I think I have an idea of what I have to do. It's going to be going to be a little bit of legwork for me, but that's all right.
Now, I did just want to remind you, I always like to mention these during the class. On your registration for the basic setup classes, let me just bring over this window here. Right, this is where you signed up for today's class. We have the training help outs. Okay, so if you run into any trouble building anything, not just the schedule rotations, you can sign up for these.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you've signed up for these before, but they're 45 minutes in length. They're one-on-one, so you don't have to share that time with anyone else. The sessions are recorded at your request, so that's just sort of a great way if you run into any roadblocks. We can always log on and help you out.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for me. Any questions before we end things for today?
No, I think that'll do it.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Within about an hour or so, you will receive